Time for the important questions, especially after all the talk about royalties, types of music copyrights, and types of royalties that Seiyu artists may be entitled to or are owners of. I've talked briefly on episode 34 about the differences in earnings between singer-songwriters and performers. Now the big question is here. By the end of the day, who gets paid? Let's kick off this episode of Seiyu Lounge. Welcome to Seiyu Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is music royalties for male Seiyu artists. Who gets paid? Important question right here, especially if you enjoy music by Seiyu artists and ever wondered how much they can get off of their music. I've mentioned a couple of episodes ago that at times singers don't even get 10% of the revenue their music generated. It has to go to pay for expenses, staff, be collected by the music label, between many other complex things that you can check back on episodes 34 and 35. In this episode, let's tone things down a bit and go over the players that are entitled to a share of the money that the Seiyu artist earns. Any values or percentages mentioned in this episode are, in the lack of me mentioning that these are set in stone, only but estimates. Please do pay attention to the video if you're watching on YouTube, or if on a podcast streaming platform, do pay attention to what I am saying as to avoid any confusion. Once again, and because I don't want any legal trouble, a disclaimer. I am by no means a lawyer, so all information in this episode should not be considered legal advice in any capacity. These and the next episodes include information for educational purposes, because you and other Seiyu Lounge's listeners love to learn new things pertaining to the careers of your favorite voice actors and, well, as you know it, I am a geek about these things and I want to share with you how everything works behind the scenes. From this point on, and to avoid going through another 20 minutes of explanation of the complexities of music royalties, that must have been boring for you to listen to, everything that will be mentioned in this episode will be under the assumption that you've watched or listened to episodes 34 and 35. Most of the terms explained in those episodes will be used here, and there will be talk about the royalties each person has a right to. Let's explore this one. Who gets paid? Simple question with an extremely important answer to the artists themselves. What is interesting is that when someone, even outside of the Seiyu industry, ventures to the music industry, they are never truly aware of how little money you get off of your music. Unless you go viral and have the luck of having a good publishing deal, as well as a nice contract with your music label, or you are a singer-songwriter, chances are that you won't see much money throughout your career. There are several counts of artists and bands that were incredibly famous and everyone thought they were having the time of their lives, swimming in money off of their music, when they were in reality in debt and never saw any money, much due to the fact that their contracts weren't in any way favorable to them to begin with. Now imagine Seiyu. They venture into the music industry for a wide variety of reasons that I talked about on episodes 10 and 11. Many are using music as a stepping ladder, bringing the popularity they garner in the music industry as leverage, as proof of their value to impress anime directors. Others are cashing in on their popularity, creating music with their fan base into attention, nothing more. The fans will buy regardless of quality, so the CU in question know that they will be making money regardless of the effort. Then there's a selected few that are actually passionate about it and put an effort and care onto their music. Everything about their artist self is professional. You can tell that they are that serious about their career as artists as they are as voice actors. Interesting enough, regardless of their intentions, all seiyuu venturing towards the music industry are not prepared to what awaits them behind the scenes. And many end up putting their solo careers aside because they can't deal with it or simply because those are not viable to them. Yes, there are middlemen in the seiyuu industry. Yes, those with a lot of contacts or favors to cash in with anime directors speed past everyone to the leading roles. There are power plays and mind games behind the scenes. There is abuse. There are malpractices. I've talked about all of those on episodes 8 and 9 in case you're curious about the dark yet well-known secrets of the seiyuu industry. So with all of these in mind, seiyuu may seem like they arrive in the music industry fortified to the maximum and nothing there will faze them. Cue bureaucracy, cue music label contracts, cue influences once again, cue a lot of middlemen. It is not easy. Of course, seiyuu don't deal with these things directly like they do as voice actors. Generally, that's what their managers are for, or even their talent agencies for, especially if their talent agency is in any way getting a cut of the earnings that seiyuu get as an artist. Well, before artists are paid, several other entities have a right to a cut of the earnings. You have the rights holders, owning publishing and recording rights, and then you have the middlemen that collect royalties on behalf of rights holders, taking a cut for themselves. On the front row to collect money are the recording artists, songwriters, music labels, publishers, distributors, licensing companies, synchronization agencies, and performing rights organizations. Recording artists or performers. Recording artists partially own the masters or final recordings of the songs. Remember on episode 34, I mentioned that seiyuu artists that play their music usually own 50% of the recording rights to their music. And that's because the other 50% is taken by performing rights organizations. Recording artists like Old Codex, Gran Rodeo, and U-Make get streaming royalties, digital performance royalties, and synchronization licensing fees, which is basically when people issue master use licenses. Songwriters. The ones that write the lyrics, compose their music, transpose it to sheet music, craft melodies and harmonies. They are the core of the music they perform, and for that they are owners of publishing rights. They can be sole owners of their rights or have a 50-50 share with performing rights organizations, should they want to hand control over their music to an organization that will be managing their music's potential. Toshiki Toyonaga, Soma Saito, Shugo Nakamura are known for being the most active songwriters among male seiyuu solo artists. Then you have Old Codex, Gran Rodeo, and U-Make with Yoshiki Nakajima as the lyricist and Kento Ito as the composer. And these are the most active songwriters in bands and seiyuu units. All of the seiyuu I mentioned are songwriters. Songwriters are owners of the compositions and receive a percentage of all composition royalties, which is to say, all the publishing royalties. For songwriters to pick up royalties, they must have a publishing deal. The publishing company working alongside them will ensure they get the publishing rights. Why is that? Every time a song is created, there are two types of copyrights assigned to it: the composers and the publishers. Even if you don't have a publishing deal, those rights are still assigned to the song. The composer's royalties are collected by performing rights organizations. Now, what about the publishers? What happens if you don't have a publisher? You lose out on getting anything back from those 50%. All things considered, that's a lot of money that you could potentially earn if you have a publisher. A publishing company will collect royalties off of the publisher's share. They are the only ones allowed to do so. In the end, songwriters get performance royalties, mechanical royalties, and synchronization licensing fees out of the synchronization license. Publishers. Before, I've mentioned that the songwriter receives 50% of the performance and mechanical royalties. The other 50% in both royalties is, as mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the publisher's share. What is interesting is that publishers don't keep 50% of the royalties to themselves. They have to collect those 50% determined in the law. They, however, take a cut from those 50% they collect in exchange for the administrative and/or promotion services involved in collecting and maximizing the composition royalties on behalf of the songwriter. It never gets to 50% of the publisher's share in the royalties. Note that the exact cut that the publisher takes depends on the specific terms of the publishing deal they have with the songwriters. There are no two deals that have the same terms, so it is virtually impossible for me to give you any examples in this part. Music labels. Music labels invest money on seiyuu artists, and by the end of the day, it's only natural that they have their hands in a little bit of everything seiyuu artists craft. Think about the advances. That's the money given to artists to develop their albums, hiring session musicians and paying for studio time while crafting their music. Those advances are an investment, a show of trust from the music label in that talent, but it's also a way to ensure that they own a part of the master or recording rights, as those are extremely valuable. Additionally, and as mentioned on episode 34, music labels also finance the album by marketing it or helping out in its production. That's yet another way they get a cut of future recording royalties. How much music labels take is not set in stone. They do take a cut from the various types of royalties that are due to recording artists or performers. Distributors. Distributors work exclusively on the digital side of the music industry. They are responsible of getting an artist's music onto digital streaming platforms, as well as promoting the artist's content and making it visible across the digital storefronts. Distributors also collect streaming royalties on behalf of the artists. They may take a percentage of the royalties or, as an alternative, a flat fee for each royalties payout. They don't have a right to a take of synchronization fees, much due to the fact that they only handle the digital side of the music distribution. Licensing companies and synchronization agencies. Synchronization agencies are in charge of building a connection between the rights owners, which are the composers, lyricists, performers, and the music users. For copyrighted music to be synced with or featured in visual media such as TV series, anime, movies, YouTube, and video games, synchronization agencies have to step in. They work with both the master and composition sides of the music industry, clearing songs, which is to mean get the green light by artists and songwriters for their music to be used on visual media. TV series, anime, movies, and video games have to purchase licenses to feature the songs they want. That's when licensing companies step in. These usually take a cut on all synchronization fees. Performing rights organizations. Performing rights organizations are the distributors of the composition, the ones responsible for issuing licenses to music users and collecting the money generated from those licenses to give to the songwriters and their publishers. They collect performance royalties. Now that we've talked about the ones that have a big stake on the music royalties, let's talk about those in the back. Producers. They are the ones that oversee all aspects of the creation of a song or album. These aspects can include the choice of songs to be in the album, the choice of session musicians, instruments and how those instruments are played or how the music is sung, as well as the studios where the album is recorded. As you can tell, they are pivotal for Seiyuu artists. Producers can be paid a flat fee through a work-for-hire agreement, or the music label pays them an advance for their work. They also have a complex royalty system that works with points. I won't explain it as it is genuinely confusing to grasp. The bottom line is, if instead of being paid a flat fee or an advance by the music label, the producer can choose to have royalty points. With those, they can earn from 1 to 3% of the royalties that a song or album makes. On a first look, it's not much, but imagine if they produce an album that sells over 100,000 copies. That's a lot of money to be earned there just in royalties. And it keeps hitting their bank account for as long as that album or song is being sold. Session musicians. The ones that receive the least money despite being instrumental to the music that is being sold by an artist are the session musicians. They are hired to perform a certain instrument or set of instruments for an artist, and because of that, they aren't considered a part of the band. They receive a flat rate through a work-for-hire agreement. Session musicians are paid in full for their performances. They are not entitled to copyright nor royalties. Artist manager. Aside from their regular manager, Seiyuu artists also have an artist manager belonging to the music label they are signed to. They may or may not work alongside other managers that the Seiyuu in question may have. However, they are essential to a Seiyuu artist's career. They guide them in the music industry, steering them clear from all the technical stuff I have been talking about in the last couple of episodes. They help them select producers, get invitations to TV and radio shows, get them features on magazines or even magazine covers. They are important for a Seiyuu artist and, as a norm, they are entitled to a cut of the earnings. It is not set in stone, but the norm outside of the Seiyuu industry is 15 to 20% of the gross earnings that an artist makes. They also are entitled to receive the same percentage of earnings from music that was released by that artist even before they were their manager. And that's all for today's episode. Now that the storm has passed, things are starting to sound a bit easier to understand. As you can tell, there's a lot of people involved in the music a Seiyuu artist makes. All those people will get a cut of the money their music makes, which ultimately leads me to say it once again. Few are the Seiyuu artists that earn a lot of money. You need to have good, beneficial deals made with publishing companies and performing rights organizations. Your contract with the music label should be a good one for you to earn a lot of money. Spoiler, most of the times it isn't. Then you have all the people that have helped you create the music, be it the session musicians or the producer. Even your artist manager is entitled to a cut of your earnings. By the end of the day, Seiyu artists get paid, however, not as much as you'd think. When you see those big sales numbers for Seiyu artists, for example Soma Saito and Mamoru Miyano's albums, that were both over 24,000 copies sold, and notice that they made at least $500,000, remember these. They may not even see 10% of that money when everyone has collected their cut. Still, around $50,000 of revenue for an album is pretty sweet. But look at how much money they could have earned had they not had to rely on so many people. Now tell me, were you aware of how many people were entitled to royalties? Do you think that 10% to 20% of the earnings going for the Seiyu artist is a good deal? Let me know in the comments below, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, as you can be featured on upcoming episodes of Seiyu Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly male Seiyu and music related content, hit the subscribe button. I'll return next week with another episode of Seiyu Lounge. Thank you for listening and see you guys around.